Coco. So, I talked about going to see this movie with my family a little in my Thanksgiving vacation in 2017 video. And what made going to see this with my siblings so much fun is that not only was it one of the few times these days we were actually all together like so, but none of us went to the movie with any idea of what it would be like. All we saw in a couple previews and trailers was that it was bright, it was colorful, and before the movie played, there was a little preview about the CGI layering, the technology and storytelling that was used to make it, and the scale of the artistry blended with the technology. It really is quite striking in a film like this that uses such bold colors and designs. Showing that right before the movie did amp up our curiosity and expectations just a little. I think just enough to make us really interested, but unsure of what to expect from a movie with all of that put into it. And because we all went into the theater on such a blank slate, it was like we were seeing movies together as kids all over again. That is a true rarity nowadays. Let's talk about the story. And yes, this is going to have spoilers. There's just no way around it, given what I want to talk about. So if you haven't seen the film yet, stop now, go see it, then come back. Ye be warned. So the film starts off with the history of the main character's family, going back 5 generations, I think. It tells of a musician who left his family to go play for the world, as they put it, and he never comes back. His wife, Imelda, who had a child by this point, learned to make shoes and started up the family shoemaking business, and the family has kept it going for, 5 generations. The main character, a boy named Miguel, is of the 5th generation, and even though he idolizes this musician who is now hailed as the village hero, Miguel is a musician himself. He built his own guitar, taught himself to play. There's no indication that he received any formal instruction, especially since his family now looks upon music as a curse. When Miguel's family finds out that he wants to perform for the Dia de Muertos festival, what do? Well, they destroy his guitar, which is in every bit a violation on the level of, well, to compare a Disney movie, Cinderella's stepsisters destroying the dress that she, well, her animal friends, but nonetheless, made for the ball that she wanted to attend as her very possibly one experience away from her oppressive family life. It is that level of violation. Now, the musician that Miguel idolizes and strives to be like is this Ernesto de la Cruz, who was this huge movie star, wrote many beloved songs, acted in many beloved movies, performed big hit shows, and died when a big metal bell fell on him. Ouch. Miguel finds a picture clipping that suggests Ernesto de la Cruz is in fact his great-great-grandfather. Actually, this is the picture that's at the top of his family's ofrenda. He finds this picture, and I think it's the suit that the cutout picture of the great-great-grandfather is wearing that's so similar to de la Cruz, which no one ever pointed out before. Well, anyway. He gets the idea to borrow his guitar, which is kept enshrined in Ernesto's tomb, for the music performance that will take place on the Day of the Dead, the Dia de Muertos. The Day of the Dead celebration has much in common with ancestor worship that was common in many ancient religions from all over the world, and almost certainly spun out of such religion. Had its initial origins, I believe, way back in the Native Mexican Americans who are not the immediate ancestors of the Mexicans today, but and then there's some fusion of Native Mexican, American, Spanish spiritualisms that all mixed together some hundreds of years ago. It's also very similar to some aspects of Halloween. It's an interesting tradition, the remembrance and honoring of the dead. And I think there is much we could learn from the remembering and investigating our own family histories, and in learning from both the mistakes that our ancestors made and also in valuing their triumphs. But that is not what Miguel's family was doing. They participated in the holiday, yes. They kept the family together, mostly. The grandmother, who is the daughter of the great-grandma Coco, who this film is named for, and by the end of the movie it's clear as to why. But the grandmother, who actively heads the family, is extremely authoritative, emotionally abusive, in fact. There's no room for Miguel to rebel or test boundaries, as children need to be able to do. And music is viewed as a curse by this family, which came from the belief that was started by Coco's mother, Imelda, and, well, it's far less of a belief, and almost exclusively just from her sheer anger and bitterness. Her great-great-grandson, who loves music, now has to suffer. Talk about not taking into account the consequences of your actions and choices there, Imelda. Especially within a culture where families do very much stick to the traditions that take hold. There's no hint, no evidence that either Imelda or any of her immediate family or descendants attempted any fact-finding at all. They just went with the story that this musician left them, abandoned the family, and no further questions were asked. What if, perchance, something happened to him? The family had 4 generations. 4 generations! For someone to go and try to find something out. But of course, no. He left because he just left. Because he chose music over his family, even though, as we find out later, he had an extremely strong bond with his, at the time, very young daughter, Coco. Music is a curse, and the family just stuck to the story, the narrative, out of Imelda's bitterness, believing so strongly that she was right 4 generations later, believing so strongly that that her take on the story was right, which, you know, her feeling of being abandoned at first was justified, but now, 4 generations later, when Miguel has such a passion for music that he builds his own guitar, risking the approval and even, as far as he knows, love of his family, he tries to talk to them about his passion. What do? They go and literally destroy it. So after that happens, when Miguel takes Ernesto's guitar, he is transported to the spirit world, and in order to get back to the world of the living, he needs to find his deceased ancestors and get their blessing. He runs into a down-on-his-luck skeleton named Hector, who offers to help him get the blessing of his grandfather Ernesto after his other deceased family members, including Imelda, refuse to give him their blessing unless he agrees to never play music again, which is an unfair and, for Miguel, impossible condition. Whereas the only condition Hector has is that Miguel, when he returns to the land of the living, places his picture, which has been forgotten by most in the material plane, on his family's altar, the family ofrenda. There's an awesome and adorable piece in which Miguel and Hector play on stage for an audience of skeletons. This is in the spirit world, and the spirit world has these funny counterparts to the living world. I mean, there's like security guards. You have to go through this toll booth like place to get to visit the world of the living, or and you can only, and the reason that your friend is important is you can only pass through on the night of the Day of the Dead if your picture is on the ofrenda. That's why that's important. Interesting way they have the world of the dead mirror the world of the living. And they even have this, you can die in the world of the dead, the second death, if you have been completely forgotten by the living world. This is why this is important to the story. Miguel eventually gets into Ernesto de la Cruz's party, and at first Ernesto is thrilled to learn that he has a grandson. Now, through a complex linking of scenes from Ernesto's movies to occurrences in the past between Ernesto and Hector, who were once good friends, or at least friendly business partners or something like that, it is revealed that Ernesto poisoned Hector, who was the actual artist and writers of Ernesto's songs that made him a famous and well-loved hero in the land of the living. When Miguel learns the truth, he abandons Ernesto to join forces with Hector, and the remainder of the movie is a fast-paced race to explain the truth to the other family members, get Imelda's blessing, expose De La Cruz for the thief and murderer that he was, and get Miguel back to the living realm before he permanently becomes a skeleton, reconcile with his living family, and return Hector's picture to his place on the family ofrenda before he disappears from the spirit world. All very exhilarating, emotional, and emotionally exhausting. So, you really do have to see the movie. Hopefully, you already have if you've been listening to this. If you haven't, I did warn you that I would give spoilers. Although the movie is so well done that a mere conversation about it isn't quite enough, and it does deserve a place in your family's movie collection. There is so much that this film can bring to the table to talk about. One of those is the image of the star who made it big by stealing from other people. The narrative oh so popular, that rich, powerful, and successful people only become so by backstabbing other people and stealing from them, which in this movie did happen, and certainly has been known to happen in real life, but is by no means always the case. And you also have to understand that people who become successful, movie stars, pop stars, and the like, pretty much have their life turned into nothing but that. And the demands placed on them by millions of people who will stay with them while they are hot, but be ready to ditch them to jump on the next big thing without a moment's hesitation, can end in true tragedy for them, has many times. And this is something that is not explained, I think, to people at the start of their careers, when it really should be. Once again, the movie starts off with the story of a musician who apparently abandoned his family and never came back. But the family never bothered to confirm whether that was what actually happened or not. As I said, they really didn't do any fact-finding at all. And the mystery would never have been solved in the way that it was by a 12-year-old boy, nonetheless, if this was a universe in which the spirit world was only a belief but not real. And when grandmother Elena destroys Miguel's guitar, the parents don't stick up for him. This is, again, a culture that may value family but does not value the feelings or gives credibility to the experiences and viewpoints of children, which is something that every single culture in the world really needs to work on doing. Miguel is able to talk to his great-grandmother Coco at the end about what happened to her papa by singing and playing the songs for her that her father did when she was a baby. And I think everyone in the theater was crying at that scene. Miguel learns the truth and the value of family a hair's width from too late. He really earns his happy ending by the thinnest skin of his teeth in more ways than one. However, did the family ever apologize to Miguel for how they had treated him before? Not that I ever heard. Oh, And Skeleton Imelda's giving of her blessing, no conditions, near the end, not nearly enough to make up for what he had to live under. They were horrible to him in the beginning, both his living family and his ancestors, and only when he had gone through all of the hardships that he has by the end, and brought the truth to them and to Coco at so much personal risk and trauma, do they accept him for who he is. By the end of the film, Miguel's family may have given him their blessing, but apart from Hector, as far as my perspective goes, the rest of them, they did not earn his forgiveness. All that said, the movie is breathtakingly beautiful.